Welcome back to SA Sports Show. I'm here with sporting royalty. Let me tell you, Johnny Letts, welcome to Ando's Blast from the Past.
Thanks, Greg. It's great to be
honoured,
here.
Mate. I'm telling you, I'm honoured. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, I've actually done a little bit of research. I love my racing.
Yes.
But when you start looking at 2,350 wins, that is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I know we've got a couple of Melbourne Cups and a few other things we'll go through as my little segment goes along. But take us back, 16 years old, you're apprentice jockey, your life now's ahead of you, and would you have ever thought you would have ridden over 2,350 wins?
Well, you know, Greg, when I started off, I was 15 years of age. Like, I hadn't ridden a horse till I was 13.
Right.
And my teacher, I went to Lefevre Tech.
Yep.
That was the 7th school I'd been to because I kept running away from schools all the time, and I just didn't want to be educated, more or less.
Yeah.
and you know, I think sometimes, Greg, how lucky was I? The last teacher that had me as his pupil was at Lefevre Tech, and he said to me, "What are you going to do when you leave school?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I was 4 stone 5 and I was 4'5".
Right.
And he said, "Why don't you become a jockey?" And I said,
Just like that?
Just like that. And you know, sometimes, Greg, I think back, what if that 1 to 7 schools had said it to me before him? I mightn't have taken any notice.
Yeah, you're right.
But he said it. He said, "You've got the perfect credentials." And I'll tell you what they are. You're not real big and you're not real smart. So I said, "I'm perfect."
But then you got Hayes down the road, because
yes.
Then at Semaphore, of course, there was such a thriving industry. Was our horse industry just off Military Road there, and you'd see all the horses, doing their water work down on the beach and things like that. So a lot of people forget that. Yet it's great residential real estate now, of course, but back in those days there was lots and lots of stables, and it was a thriving industry. And as you said, you're 4'5", and sliding door moment, wasn't it?
It was, Greg. And you know, you talk about that area, and of course you know that area. I mean, West Lakes was Colin Hayes' training track.
That's right, yeah.
And we had Albie Holberton, we had the Cowie boys, we had the Matsons, we had famous names in racing that were in that.
That's right.
When you go back, isn't it, though? But when you go back, Greg, and you think, the famous names that have come from this area, you know, as trainers.
Yeah, that's right.
There was the Jack May and Billy May, Albie Holberton, and Lenny Smith, and like Frank Smith, and he drove Minor Derby, and Alan Smith. I mean, it was just royalty in the block.
There, yeah. And West Lakes is there, but we moved to West Lakes in 1974 in December, and they let the water in a week later. So you take yourself back to when you do an apprentice. That was where you guys were racing for training and et cetera, and generations as well, because some of the names that you just mentioned,
famous names,
I know their sons, and they're still in the racing game.
Yes.
It just really is amazing.
But you know, Greg, one of the stories that comes out of it, when Colin Hayes had his track, it was a cinder track, and it was in swampland. As you know, West Lakes was a swampland. Well, we would take the horses, and Colin Hayes would say to us, and it'd be summer, and it'd be pretty warm, and Colin Hayes would say, "Trot the horses a lap, and then next lap we work them."
Yeah.
Well, these are true stories, because we could trot a horse a lap, and when we come round the next lap on the cinder track, it was a cinder track, you could see where the snakes had been across, and in that swampland.
And of course it's going to be there, yeah.
And you think, wow, if I ever fall off a horse going around here, I'm going to be back on its back before it goes another step.
Exactly.
That's what it was. But it's a great area.
Colin Hayes, you're just talking about Colin Hayes, and I mean, you know, also another South Australian incredible icon of sports, you know, and
fantastic.
Some of the names you just mentioned there's a whole bunch of you, really, really fantastic, yeah.
And you know, Greg, and you'd find it too, being involved with the guys down there in the football area, it was family, wasn't it?
It was family. Yeah, it was community.
Yeah, it was community.
Really
it was family, which I think the industries now, a lot of industries are losing that, aren't they? They're losing the community, family feeling. And that's sad, because now it's got more, well, I won't say more professional, but it's
commercial.
Got commercial. Yeah. That's the word.
Yeah.
That's the word.
Yeah. Look, I've got to ask. I've got all these notes. Melbourne Cup. I mean, that would have been obviously a dream come true. Like when I'd run for a ball and I'm about to pick it up, there's something in my mind saying, Greg, you've got 2 metres, he's not near you, you've got your own sort of perpetual vision and just a bit of know-how where your opponent might be. Did that little voice say, you got about 2-3 metres, you're going to win the Melbourne Cup. Yep. What was it like running to that on Piping Lane?
Yeah, Piping Lane, the first one, yep.
When you're running to that line and you're thinking, oh, I've got it. That must have been just amazing.
Well, you know, Greg, it's an incredible thing about the Melbourne Cup. My ambition in my life as a jockey was to win a Port Adelaide Cup.
Is that right?
And I ran 3 seconds by half a head each time.
So you
I wanted to win a Port Adelaide.
You ran 3 Adelaide Cups. You won an Australian Cup. You won the Victorian Derby. You won the Epsom Handicap and many more. But you couldn't win the one you really wanted.
I couldn't win it, and I was disappointed at the end of my career that I couldn't win it. But then when I moved on and I wasn't going to win it, I thought my second cup to win was the Adelaide Cup. You know, being a hometown boy, as you would be too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I wanted to win an Adelaide Cup. Well, I was fortunate enough, as you said, I won 3.
Yeah.
But then the disappointment, you know, in your life, I mean, I won the Adelaide Cup on Rain Lover as a 3-year-old.
Yeah, that's right, yep.
And when I came in after the race, Graham Hegney, who trained Gaddam a couple of years earlier, said, you're riding this horse in the Melbourne Cup. And he said, and you'll win. And I thought, wow, you know, Melbourne Cup. I'm on a 3-year-old here.
Yeah.
He's going to be 4 when he goes to the Melbourne Cup. The perfect age, the weight, everything is in his favour. And Graham had won it with Gaddam, of course. And about 2 months later, Graham took ill. And we lost the horse. He went to another stable because Graham gave up.
Yeah.
I lost the ride. So I thought, you know, sometimes in your life, Greg, you think there's an opportunity. Sometimes you get one opportunity, but very rarely you get 2. You might get 2. But the one opportunity, and it wasn't my fault, but I lost the ride because Jimmy Johnson was Mickey Robinson's jockey, and that's fair enough. And Jimmy was my mentor. You know, he was my mentor.
Yeah.
I idolised Jim Johnson. And Jimmy got on him in the Melbourne Cup, and he won by 8 lengths.
Did too. Yeah.
You know, and people say to me, even to this day, he won the Melbourne Cup in 68, he won it in 69. How did you feel? I said, you know, if anyone else had ridden him, I said I would have felt bad, real bad.
I get you,
JJ was my mentor. You know?
That was,
And it softened the blow.
Nearly barracking.
Yes. And, you know, I thought, now the opportunity came along and I missed it.
Yeah.
So I'll never get it again.
Yeah.
So I just sort of wiped the Melbourne Cup out. That was my dream. My dream was to ride the Melbourne Cup.
Even that young, you thought this might not happen now.
I'd just like to ride in the Melbourne Cup because, you know, you see it, there's 100,000 people and you're sitting up the top of the straight and there's 100,000 people waiting for you to go. And I thought, what a feeling, you know, because, I mean, Morphett Will was fantastic to ride on the big days because you've got the crowd one side, the crowd on the other side, but they're back off the rail on. But the Melbourne Cup, it's just packed.
Yeah.
And to describe it, a jockey to describe it is just, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And you cool, calm and collect, a little bit of butterflies, but not much. Because you've been out there before, but not in a Melbourne Cup. But a little bit of butterflies, but you think, this is what I've waited for. And, you know, and 4 years after Piping Lane won his second, not Piping Lane, Rain Lover, won his second Adelaide Cup, I got a phone call. Yeah. And John Letts, have you got to ride in the Melbourne Cup next Tuesday? And this was on the Wednesday before, 6 days. And I thought, this is someone having a joke, you know. I tried to recognise the voice. I thought one of my mates or a couple of his mates had got out, my mates had got out last night, and they've, you know, got a bit of into him, and they said, we'll offer Let's you ride in the Melbourne Cup. Because I'd never been out of South Australia to ride. And I said, no. I said, I haven't actually taken a ride yet. I thought I'd lead them on. Yeah. I said, but I'm waiting on Tommy Smith, Bart Cummings or Colin Hayes to ring me. Well, that was never going to happen, Greg. Right. And the guy said, oh, well, we'll have to get another jockey. I said, who's it for? He said, George Hanlon. Well, what a lot of people don't realise about George Hanlon, he's a South Australian. He was born at Wallaroo. Yeah. And they all claim him in Victoria because he won 3 Melbourne Cups. Right. Yeah. Of course they do. So I took the ride and in the Melbourne Cup and he said, horse called Piping Lane. And he said, you heard of him? And I hadn't. And I said, yeah. I said, he goes all right. Yeah, I thought, he'll go all right. I just want to ride. You know, you just wanted the rides. You wanted to get into the atmosphere. Yeah. But then, over there, of course, history, and you talk about the feeling, you know, when you're looking for the opportunities and what's going to happen in that. I turned for home in the Melbourne Cup, and I'll never forget it, my first Melbourne Cup on Piping Lane. I was running 11th, and there was 24 in, and I thought, I'm going to beat more than half home.
Right, you knew it was. You knew it had it under
I
you.
thought, I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
I'm happy with that. And
first Melbourne Cup ride.
Yeah,
First,
never
first
been
one.
to Flemington, never seen the place.
Yeah.
Walked away with it.
Wow,
Racing,
isn't that fantastic? We got more. I got heaps more questions to ask you. Can we come back next week?
We sure can.
Oh,
it's a Melbourne Cup. It's 2 miles. It's one of the longest races ever. So we'll break it into 2 parts.
Absolutely fantastic. Okay, we'll see you after the break.